So after the Battlefield 6 multiplayer reveal, I remember having a cheeky little surf of the Battlefield hashtags to see what was on the community's minds. One thing I do remember post-reveal is that after I made the trek back to home soil in the land down under and turned off my flight mode, there was one clip doing the rounds on Twitter in particular that was exploding. It was this one, of Scump in the firing range rocking the Ultimax LMG, dumping an entire mag, not even using his right stick on the controller to control the recoil. And despite that, there was a lack thereof of weapon recoil. It simply wasn't moving. It looked like a complete and total laser beam. It's safe to say that the response from the community and this clip was, passionate. Ah shit, another bloody beamatron of an FPS game with no real skill curve, was the general theme of the comments I was able to see. And look, to be fair, that's a fair response given that Battlefield's gunplay has always been at its best when there is a skill curve to climb. And sure, it's fair to take that position if you had no time with the game or the broader context of how the gunplay actually feels beyond this edge case. So, that's why I'm here to tell all of you that everyone is wrong about Battlefield 6's gunplay. Now, before we go any further, I will acknowledge that, yes, the clip is downright insane. The fact that Scum can sit there and have the weapon not kick at all under a burst like that obviously is a bit ridiculous, and I think everyone would welcome some balancing to the gun in that regard. However, it's also worth pointing out that the weapon also fits into the armory as a low skill ceiling but also low skill floor kind of weapon. Something that is very easy to pick up and just simply use and requires very little work from the player to keep on target. Many games actually tend to bring on weapons like this into the fray as a means to give players of lower skill a means to still shoot straight. I mean, more often than not, you'll find a weapon like that across all categories of weapon in a game that offer that kind of choice. Battlefield is no exception and has done this for many years over many iterations of its series. But as a consequence of that design choice with those weapons, said weapons are also likely to be quote-unquote less deadly in some metrics to balance out the ease of use, normally through a lower peak time to kill that directly offsets the ease of use as a trade-off. It's actually not the only weapon that we currently have in Battlefield 6 that follows this weapon archetype. The AK-205 carbine is also guilty of this build as well, following in the Ultimax's footsteps and maintains an extremely accurate recoil pattern and bloom spread even after a long burst. Wait, hold on. 2 laser beam weapons, Cammy? Good God, this is the most skillless FPS game I've ever heckin' seen. And look, I know we may be picking up on a bit of a trend here, but please allow me to direct our attention to some of the other weapons in the arsenal here as a bit of a counterpoint. Alright, so I'm here in the firing range and I'm rocking what is essentially, I think, the Ace 23, or I forget its in-game name, but it's basically an Ace 23 from Battlefield 4, right? And it's in this game here as well. I've got no attachments on it, so I'm just going to go ahead and fire at the wall here. Obviously, there's all the recoil here. That's with no degree of compensation from myself, but not only is there significant amounts of, recoil at play here, but you can see the spread on the gun. Like, as you hold down the trigger, the gun is blooming out with its bullet spread there, which we love to see. To further illustrate the point, here's the M4A1. Also, completely naked build, no attachments whatsoever, no kind of compensation. I mean, it's even worse. Look at that. M4A1, typically a gun in most games that is designed to be, relatively low recoil, and look at the thing. Off we go, off to the stratosphere, boys. That's unreal. For good measure, this is also the SGX, was also renowned as one of the more laser beamery type of weapons in the LA reveal event. And, again, still a handsome amount of recoil there. And, as the bloom sort of pushed up there, as the recoil pushed up, sorry, as the burst went on, you could see that the bloom really does a number on the gun. So it's not that there's no sense of bloom or recoil or anything like that in the game. It's there, and it's evident. I mean, in all 3 examples, we can see varying degrees of recoil and bloom spread being applied to the guns at various points of spray. Now, I want to address this too because I can see this coming from a mile away in the comments. These are, of course, stock weapons that we're referring to, and attachments can have a massive impact, kind of like what you're seeing in the background gameplay now. However, the point here is that the gunplay at a base level, at a core design level, holds some mechanics that provide varying skill curves on a weapon-to-weapon basis. Attachments and some other weapon outliers can be a bit silly, sure, but that's more of a balance issue, in my opinion, rather than a core gameplay design issue. It's not a problem with the gunplay system and how it's been set up, it's a problem with what you can do to the gunplay system through the use of attachments. And that can be refined and tweaked in the future to find that happy middle ground. It's not like Battlefield 2042 where every gun really felt like it lacked any bloom whatsoever, and you were seeing things like the RM68 absolutely giga-lasering people at a 100-meter distance under a full auto burst. That cannot happen in this game at all, with the exception of a couple of weapons, and their damage output as a result is tweaked to compensate. And that's the one thing I really wanted to clear up after I saw the outlash from the community on Twitter, because it really was an unfortunate edge case among what I thought was a pretty good offering of weapons and gunplay while playing the game in LA and while I'm playing it at home here in the open beta. One thing that I will actually say though is that if you were to compare this game's gunplay to Battlefield 3's and 4's gunplay, it does feel like the potential skill curve has been condensed just a touch, at least for the portion of the arsenal that we've gotten our hands on so far. So we'll see if these thresholds remain to be the core of the game's gunplay for now, but I also know that DICE have adjusted the time to kill of the game for the open beta, which I'll need to get way more hands-on time before I can actually comment on that properly, but it is good to see that DICE are taking the time to, address their core gunplay and make adjustments as required in incremental stages rather than making sweeping changes like we saw in Battlefield 5. One thing I do also want to quickly touch on before I wrap up the video here as well, folks, is that when I was looking at the response to that viral tweet that was doing the rounds, there was a lot of people calling for the fact that this kind of gunplay or this kind of weapon just shouldn't exist full stop. That a weapon designed this way is simply going to be the new meta because it's just simply the easiest to use, yada yada yada. But I guarantee you folks that that's actually going to be far from the truth. Once we get access to the game's whole armory and we start seeing more weapons come into the fray, some of which are likely to have steeper learning curves and skill curves associated with them, I actually promise you those weapons are going to be the meta, because if balanced correctly, those are going to be the weapons that, hold the greatest killing potential if the user can wrangle them properly. It's what we saw with the AEK 971 in Battlefield 4, right? It was a absolute menace to handle if you didn't know what you were doing, but if you were dialed in, it became an absolute beam and it became something that was extremely effective at what it did. Weapons like the Ultimax and the AK-205 in the context of Battlefield 6 are very important to have in giving those lower skilled players an opportunity to still wrangle a weapon and put it to good use, even if it's not going to achieve the peak killing power that can be achieved. I consider myself a somewhat decent shooter in these games, but there's also some days where I just want to, throw on the easiest weapon there is to use in the game and simply start beaming people, even though I know that I could be doing better with something else. It's just a lazy kind of day, and having that option in the game to you is very important as well to a wide range of players. So just because we're seeing something like this in Battlefield 6 doesn't mean we need to start hitting the alarm bells just yet. With that being said though, guys, that does wrap up today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I also hope you're enjoying the open beta as well if you got early access. It very much feels like we're back in business here with Battlefield 6, at least for the time being, so we're going to keep riding the wave as best we can for the moment. If you guys are keen for more Battlefield 6 content, make sure you hit that subscribe button as well. Always keen to welcome new folks to the community. But until next time, guys, peace out, and I'll see you all then. Have a good one, folks.